I've been married for 2 decades, enduring both the highs and lows of a long and challenging marriage. Recently, I stumbled upon a shocking secret that had been concealed for 10 years. You won't believe what happened that day. I'm Henry, a 42-year-old successful businessman, and my life has just been turned upside down. Allow me to recount the day when my life took a devastating turn. I come from a lower middle-class background, and from an early age, I learned the value of money and how it could transform lives. Growing up, my dreams revolved around achieving success and financial security. I attribute my present success to my upbringing and the difficulties I encountered. My wife, Samantha, was my high school sweetheart, and she understood my background and aspirations. She had witnessed my family's financial struggles and encouraged me to dream big. We've been married for over 2 decades now and have a 17-year-old daughter whom I adore. Our early years together as a couple were extraordinary, to be honest. We had a deep understanding and an enduring spark. We complemented each other perfectly, and many believed our love would last a lifetime. But now, I've lost hope, something I never anticipated. It's unbelievable, but it happened. As far as I can tell, it all began when my business started to thrive, and I became consumed by keeping it on the right track. I was determined not to be stuck in a 9-to-5 job like everyone else. My goal was to establish a successful business, and fortunately, within a year, it became one of the top companies in the country. However, this success also meant an overwhelming workload, especially during the early years. I would leave home early in the morning and return late at night, utterly exhausted and unable to engage in meaningful conversation. That's not to say I didn't make an effort in our relationship anymore. I still tried to carve out time each day, even if it was just a few minutes for a peaceful conversation with Samantha. I also made sure to cherish and commemorate every moment and milestone in our relationship, hoping to make them special. Despite all these efforts, Samantha seemed to grow more distant. Initially, I believed it was because I wasn't doing enough. But considering my role as the CEO of a rapidly growing company, I was doing all I could. I attempted to communicate with her, asking about the issues so I could work on resolving them, but she never provided a clear response. Then, 3 years into our marriage, our daughter Haley was born. She was the greatest gift I ever received, and that day marked the happiest moment of my life. Haley's birth brought light into our lives, and I was determined to be the best father I could be. This meant putting in extra effort to ensure we had enough financial stability to provide for her every need and want, ensuring that quality always accompanied necessity. However, the additional hard work also meant more overtime. So, despite my intentions to be present and care for my family, circumstances often prevented me from doing so, and I would return home to find them both asleep. For some inexplicable reason, Samantha's and my relationship deteriorated further after Haley was born. We seemed to drift even farther apart, and any attempt at conversation only escalated into arguments. This not only took a toll on our mental well-being but also caused anxiety in our 1-year-old Haley. Our home environment, meant to provide comfort, instead left her feeling stressed, even though she was just a baby. This led Samantha and me to the conclusion that we should stop trying to communicate. Our discussions dwindled to mere necessities, and then we returned to silence. It felt like we were roommates rather than a married couple. Our once warm and inviting home had lost its usual charm, and we were to blame. I believed we were concealing it well enough to shield Haley from the impact, but truthfully, Samantha was at fault. I made every effort to maintain a healthy relationship for the sake of Haley's childhood. However, ever since Haley turned 10, Samantha began discussing our relationship issues with her. It made no sense to burden a child with such matters. Moreover, Samantha's actions were damaging Haley's relationship with me. I acknowledge that I'm often busy and can't devote as much time to our family as I should. However, I work tirelessly to provide them with everything needed for a happy and comfortable life. Strangely, not only do I go unappreciated for my efforts, but I also face resentment nonetheless. I never anticipated my life becoming so empty. At one point, I was aware that Samantha had considered divorce due to the strain in our relationship. When I learned about it, I made a concerted effort to talk to her and convey my desire to work harder to salvage our relationship. It bothered me at times because every argument seemed to stem from my perceived lack of effort to repair our relationship. But then I realized she wasn't putting in effort either. I would plan special days and bring her gifts for every occasion, yet she would consistently forget. All she could recall was that I frequently stayed late at work and didn't allocate enough time for her. I made an effort to attend Haley's games and events, but it seemed like I was going unnoticed. Despite my best efforts, nothing could compare to the overwhelming emotions I was experiencing. Now, on a random Thursday night after finishing work earlier than usual, I had a strong desire to spend quality time with my family. It was a rare occasion when I was able to leave work early, and I envisioned a cozy movie night with the three of us. However, upon arriving home, I discovered that Haley was not there. When I asked about her, I learned she had gone to a party and wouldn't return until midnight. Undeterred, I still wanted to enjoy a movie night with Samantha, but she declined and went to bed, citing exhaustion. I couldn't help but wonder what had kept her so busy throughout the day. Nevertheless, I saw this as an opportunity to relax and catch up on some work. I turned on the TV, fetched my laptop, settled on the couch, and savored a cup of coffee. I also planned to stay up until midnight to ensure Haley returned safely, even though we had set a curfew. I still worried about her and wanted to see her before going to bed. However, an hour later, I received a call from the police station informing me that Haley had been arrested for underage drinking. My world seemed to come crashing down. I had always emphasized the dangers of underage drinking to Haley and trusted her not to engage in such activities until she reached the legal drinking age. She had betrayed that trust, and I feared that things might only get worse from here. I hastily grabbed my jacket from the rack and rushed to the police station where she was being held. Anxiety overwhelmed me as I entered the station, desperately searching for Haley and wanting to ensure her safe return home. When I finally laid eyes on her, it was disheartening to see no remorse in her expression. She met my gaze with a nonchalant eye roll. I remember taking a deep breath to calm myself before launching into a stern lecture about her reckless behavior, emphasizing the gravity of her actions and how they could ruin her life. I hoped she would at least show some regret or acknowledgement of her wrongdoing, but she remained unfazed. I quickly arranged her release, and we made our way back to the car in silence. I was seething with anger, unable to utter a word to her. But I couldn't fathom why she remained silent. It would have been reasonable for her to offer a simple apology or a thank you for getting her out of this predicament. If Samantha had been the one to answer the phone instead of me, she would have endured her mother's furious reprimands. Yet she had me, and I was struggling to maintain composure, refraining from giving her a reason to shut me out once more. However, as we settled into the car and I started driving, I couldn't contain my frustration any longer. I felt compelled to address her absurd behavior. I had always made it clear that I disapproved of underage drinking, and she was well aware of that. Nevertheless, she not only got herself arrested for it but displayed no remorse. She didn't even attempt to grasp the gravity of the situation. During the car ride home, I expressed my dismay, and the conversation escalated into a heated argument. The argument began because I was delivering a lecture about her recklessness, a typical parental response. However, she believed she didn't deserve to be lectured, arguing that she was 17 now and old enough to make her own decisions. According to her, all her friends were involved in such activities, and their parents didn't react as strongly as I did. Her reasoning appeared foolish to me as an adult. Just because her friends engaged in certain behaviors didn't mean she should blindly follow suit. What if they were involved in something risky or even worse? Why would she place such unquestioning trust in her friends to make responsible choices for her? My rhetorical questions only seemed to fuel her anger, leading to a heated argument where we both lost sight of the content of our words. Amidst this heated exchange, Haley inadvertently revealed something that would alter the course of my life forever. It truly altered the course of my life. She dropped a bombshell, revealing that Samantha had been engaging in serial infidelity for nearly 4 years now. When those words left her lips, my ears started ringing, and my mouth went dry. It felt as though I couldn't breathe for a moment until I snapped back to reality. There sat Haley, still and wide-eyed, her hand covering her mouth. Clearly, this wasn't a topic she wanted to broach. It left me wondering how many more secrets they both had kept from me, and I remained completely unaware. After a few moments of silence, during which I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, I implored her to clarify. Initially, she resisted, refusing to utter a single word, no matter how many times I pressed her. My patience wore thin, and she remained unresponsive until I resorted to raising my voice, practically screaming to extract the truth. That's when I learned about what had transpired over the years and how it was ongoing. Evidently, Haley and Samantha believed that I was seldom home and didn't provide them with enough family time. Despite my explanations about working hard to provide for their every want and need, Haley insisted that I had never made sufficient time for them. Samantha had gone out with her friends, met a man she was attracted to, and eventually had Haley meet him at home. Astonishingly, Haley didn't mind Samantha's infidelity because she felt similarly. She explained how my inadequacy as a family member drove Samantha to seek romance elsewhere in a quest for affection. Over the past 4 years, Samantha had been involved with over 8 men, having brief relationships lasting a few months before growing bored or breaking up, only to move on to another man. At the end of Haley's revelation, which I endured in silence while seething with anger, I couldn't wait to return home and confront Samantha with this information. Even though Haley was privy to more details than I would have liked her to know, Samantha and I still needed to address this matter ourselves. However, I couldn't do so immediately because Haley was in a state of distress. She made me promise not to disclose to Samantha that I knew. Initially, I contemplated disregarding her request because this was an issue between my wife and me, and we needed to resolve it on our own. Haley used emotional manipulation, threatening to cut off communication with me if I revealed the truth. So for now, I've chosen to remain silent about the whole situation. But honestly, I'm uncertain about how much longer I can keep this secret. The past few weeks have been incredibly challenging. Whenever I look at Samantha, all I can see is a cheater who prioritizes herself and her desire to sneak around with different men every few months. It became increasingly difficult to contain my feelings and resentment, especially when Samantha casually moved about the house as if nothing was amiss. Why would anything bother her? Though she wasn't the one enduring over 4 years of deception. Things took a turn for the worse every time Samantha asked me for favors or presents. Hatred started to consume my thoughts, and I couldn't help but dwell on her secret liaison behind my back. This brings me to last week when I sat in Haley's room, perched on her bed with my head in my hands. I tried to explain to her that I couldn't continue this charade any longer and that I was on the verge of breaking my promise to reveal to Samantha that I knew about her infidelity. The sole reason I didn't act on my plan without discussing it with Haley is that I've already lost my wife, and I didn't want to lose my daughter too. If it weren't for Haley, I would have already kicked Samantha out of the house. But I couldn't bear the thought of my daughter leaving my life. Despite Haley not holding me in high regard, I still loved her just as I did the day she was born. She would always be my daughter, and nothing could change that. Moreover, Haley wasn't to blame for any of this. Samantha had been poisoning her against me for as long as Haley could comprehend what was happening. It was foolish of me to believe that leaving Haley with Samantha all day would lead to anything other than this. However, I never realized just how much Samantha resented me. I acknowledge that we've had our share of arguments ever since I began working, but I did my utmost to resolve them and shield Haley from their direct impact. I don't comprehend why Samantha can't do the same. While sitting in my daughter's room, I attempted to convey my perspective to her and explain how her support for her mom deeply hurt me. I've put in all this effort so we could afford everything they desired. I asked her if she'd prefer me to work less if it meant not being able to provide all these material things she wanted. In response, Haley remained silent. I informed her of my intention to confront her mother about the situation, but she vehemently protested. Apparently, she was adamant about not wanting to be part of a broken family and urged me to keep quiet to continue living my life as it was. Despite my efforts to convey that the family was already fractured, she refused to relent. She repeatedly stated that she'd cut off all contact with me if I uttered a word to Samantha. It's a tough situation, and while I understand her concerns, I'm uncertain if I want to comply. It all became too overwhelming for me, so I've started immersing myself in work. Now, I'm hoping either to forget about all this sooner or to lack the energy to deal with it any longer. The recent weeks have been incredibly trying for my sanity. I mean, it's unrealistic to expect me to remain composed and let everything continue as if nothing happened. It doesn't work that way, especially considering how in tune I am with my emotions. I couldn't do it when we were a happy couple, and I certainly can't do it now, given our fragile relationship. My increased frustration and short temper have become evident to everyone at my workplace. I found myself getting irritated with every employee, and even my assistant ended up caught in the crossfire. Despite my initial intention to keep my personal issues away from work, that's always been a top rule for me since I started this job. It's been broken. Not only have my employees noticed the change, but my own family has also become aware of my cranky mood. Obviously, Haley knows the reason behind it, but it's been a significant adjustment for Samantha. She's never witnessed me being this irritable. I've always been the one to manage everyone's moods, so it's unusual for me to behave this way, and my family has had to adapt to my mood swings. These fights have caused a lot of strife because I would lose my temper and snap at Samantha for everything she said or did. It often resulted in us sleeping in separate rooms. Even though Haley had asked me not to disclose that I knew about Samantha's infidelity because she didn't want our family to fall apart, I felt like these fights were only making matters worse. Then, the day arrived when I couldn't contain my emotions any longer. It was a Sunday, and spending the whole day at home with Samantha was taking a toll on me. I couldn't even look at her without my anger flaring up. Just like any other day, this led to yet another argument. But this time, I had had enough of her behavior. In a fit of rage, I shouted at her and confronted her with the truth. I knew she was a serial cheater and had been unfaithful to me for nearly 4 years now. Haley rushed downstairs upon hearing the commotion and quickly understood what I had just revealed. Both of them turned their attention to me as I struggled to contain my anger and demanded the names of the guys she had cheated on me with. However, all I received in response was a sarcastic laugh, and she informed me that I had forfeited that right when I stopped coming home early to spend time with them. It was so absurd to hear those words from her that I didn't even know how to react. She went on to claim that every guy she had been involved with had made her feel more loved than I had in recent years, and that I was the worst of them all. I attempted to explain that I was doing my utmost to support them and ensure they had a good life, especially in a world where rising costs were affecting everyone's finances. However, none of them would listen. As I shouted and tried to convey that I still considered them my family, it seemed they were the ones no longer putting in the effort to bring our family back together with love. The conversation left me feeling isolated because I realized that no matter how hard I tried, they wouldn't comprehend why I was working so diligently. They appeared to be incredibly self-centered. Even though I knew for a fact that I hadn't been entirely absent, I remembered all the important dates for both of them, ensured we spent every holiday together, and made an effort to be there for them after work, even if it meant arriving home very late and utterly exhausted. While I rarely got to see Haley during the weekdays due to my early departure and late return from work, I still did my best. After everything that transpired last week, I've concluded that I can't continue living with this family. I can't be a part of this family any longer, and if they genuinely believe they were better off without me, then that's precisely what I would give them. They seem to have forgotten that all the challenges I endured because of work were solely to provide them with a comfortable life. Once they have nothing left, they'll come to realize my importance and beg for my return. When that moment arrives, I'll make it clear that they can cry themselves to sleep because I have no intention of rejoining them. Over the years, I've successfully expanded my business on a global scale. This meant I could work from virtually anywhere with one of my branches. Considering I had branches in numerous locations, I made a somewhat impulsive decision to work from Europe. Consequently, I relocated abroad and left my family to fend for themselves just 2 days after our heated argument, during which they expressed that they didn't need me anymore. I decided to honor their wishes. Initially, I spent those 2 days at a friend's house to take a break from the chaotic situation. It was there that I hatched this entire plan and resolved to live life for myself, no longer catering to people who no longer appreciated me. That night, I returned home to pack my belongings, booked a flight, and secured an apartment overseas. However, Samantha entered the room as I was in the midst of packing and clearing my side of the room. She expressed concern and asked what I was doing. At first, I remained silent, but then I decided that she should be aware of my intentions, so I informed her that I was leaving her and Haley to fend for themselves. I mentioned that this way she could bring over any guy she wanted because I was done with this family for good. Initially, she inquired about how they would manage to survive, but soon realized that she was only proving my point. This realization fueled her anger, and she confronted me, insisting that I should leave them some money before departing. In response, I firmly stated that I wouldn't be leaving them a single cent except for the house. Her reaction was a mix of shock and disbelief as she called Haley down from her room to bid me farewell. In a rather condescending manner, she repeatedly emphasized how I was leaving them with nothing but the house. I did get angry at both of them, and I admit I said things I probably shouldn't have. Part of me had hoped she might understand the necessity of my choice, but her words cut sharply and unforgivingly through the air, extinguishing any flicker of hope. The heaviness in my chest was palpable, a mix of grief, anger, and sorrow at leaving behind what was familiar, forging a new path far removed from the deceit and betrayal that had defined my marriage. Thoughts of a fresh start in a foreign land, away from memories and expectations, were daunting, but I knew it was necessary. Our family wasn't benefiting anyone anymore, we were merely together for the sake of it. No one truly cared about each other, and their treatment of me had become unbearable. I needed to teach them a lesson and prioritize my own mental well-being. It has been a month since I left Samantha and Haley to move overseas. Life has been kinder to me. I'm working on improving my mental health and allowing myself to savor life without the constant pressure to please others, even when utterly exhausted. However, my peace was short-lived when I received a call from Samantha, accompanied by a heavy sigh. As I answered, I braced myself for the expected accusations and demands. She urged me to return or at least send some money their way so they could fulfill their desires. She argued that I owed them at least that much. But honestly, when did I ever approve of everything they took for granted? They always assumed it was theirs to have. They told me that the other men Samantha was involved with made them feel more like a family, so they could go back to those men and ask for whatever they needed because I had no intention of giving them anything. The image of her betrayal, the countless hours she spent wrapped in another man's arms, fueled my anger and blinded me to any sense of compassion or pity. They inundated my phone with a constant stream of text messages for weeks, imploring, apologizing, and showing determination to break down the barriers. Each accusation of neglect and abandonment during our reconciliation attempts felt like a knife stabbing into my already shattered heart. However, Haley's messages carried a sense of longing from a daughter grappling with the aftermath of her parents' failed marriage. Sadly, her messages eventually took on a bitter tone, making it clear that her kindness was motivated by the hope of receiving money to regain the luxurious lifestyle they had lost due to their own selfishness. As the messages continued, I found myself retreating further into the newfound cocoon of independence. Words that once had the power to evoke emotional responses from me now seemed empty and insincere due to the past betrayal. I felt a deep sense of guilt for leaving them when the messages poured in, but the hurtful words they had spoken to me, along with the shocking revelations, left me feeling like I had no other choice. Story 2. My wife and I were still very much in love when I found out she was having an affair. We met in our hometown, and after I returned from college, we decided to settle down there. I fell in love with her at first sight, and after a few dates, we started dating officially. We got married after being together for a year and 3 months. Meeting and marrying May felt like a dream come true for me. She was the kind of woman I had always wanted to be with, hardworking, beautiful, intelligent, and a lot of fun to be around. Every day with her was exciting, and I cherished waking up next to her. May was also a passionate lover who cared deeply for me. Throughout our marriage, we rarely fought or hurt each other. We lived harmoniously, treating each other with respect. We lived a peaceful life and took good care of each other. I made sure to provide for May and meet her needs. May worked as a receptionist at a prominent women's store, and our combined income allowed us to manage our household comfortably. We never faced financial difficulties because we lived within our means. Over the 2 years of our marriage, we supported each other and strived to find better job opportunities. With May, I felt complete and looked forward to spending the rest of my life with her. She had a childlike spirit and a knack for bringing joy to any place she went. People adored May, and she was quite popular among her friends, especially since her father held a leadership position when she was in high school. Besides being an excellent wife, May was also a wonderful friend. She had 2 best friends she frequently hung out with. Sometimes they would plan weekend getaways or have their regular girls' night out, and I never objected because I understood the importance of her spending time with her friends even in marriage. I had also become friends with her best friends' husbands, so when May and her best friends went on vacation, the 3 of us would spend time together as well. We continued this for 2 years of our marriage, and even when we spent time as a family unit, I never suspected that May was cheating on me with one of her best friends' husbands. While I noticed she was particularly close to one of them, I didn't think it was anything more than friendship. I believed he was the one she related to the most, and I held on to this belief until I discovered a dark truth one evening. May informed me that she was going out to hang out with her friends as usual. I watched her get ready, putting on a new dress she had recently purchased and doing her makeup. This was her usual routine, so I didn't find anything unusual about it. I even gave her some cash in case she needed it for herself and her friends. About an hour after she left, I was looking for my golden watch in our jewelry drawer when I came across May's wedding ring. It struck me as odd that she had left her ring behind, as it wasn't like her to do so. I tried calling her, but after several unsuccessful attempts, I decided to call one of her best friends. When her best friend answered the call, I asked to speak with my wife. She informed me that May wasn't with her and that they weren't planning to hang out that night. While I was trying to process the fact that May had lied to me and left her wedding ring at home, her best friend asked if her husband was with me. I hadn't seen him, and I was surprised by her question. She was shocked when I told her that I hadn't seen her husband since the last time we all hung out. She mentioned that her husband had told her he was going out for a drink with me that night, and it was strange that he wasn't with me. At this point, we both realized that something was amiss, and we suspected that my wife and her husband might be together since they had coincidentally lied to both of us on the same night. To locate her husband, she attempted to check his Snapchat location, but it was turned off. When I checked May's Snapchat location, it was active, and we decided to head to the location. My heart sank when I realized that May's location was a hotel. We began documenting our process of going to May's hotel room. When I knocked on the door of the room she was staying in, she opened it and was utterly shocked to see both me and her best friend. She was wearing a bathrobe with nothing underneath, and her best friend's husband was in bed, expecting her to attend to whoever was at the door and then return to him. As soon as we entered the room, I began to raise my voice at her while recording the incident. She felt deeply embarrassed, her best friend was furious, and even physically confronted her husband and May for betraying her. May was overwhelmed with shame and couldn't bring herself to make eye contact with me. She didn't attempt to explain herself and stood there with tears streaming down her cheeks. After I had recorded enough, I left with her best friend and warned May not to come home. She didn't return that night and likely spent it in the hotel room with her affair partner. That night, she not only lost her marriage but also her longtime friend. Her best friend and I decided to post the video online without concealing their identities, intending to further humiliate her. We combined the video with the Snapchat location data and kept sharing them online until many people started reposting them. This was especially humiliating for her because most people in our hometown knew her, and she had been friends with her best friend since high school. This was the first time I had ever been so heartbroken, and I was not myself for weeks. Days after catching her with her best friend's husband, she tried to beg me and promised it would never happen again, but I remained unmoved by her words. We ultimately divorced because I couldn't bear the shame of being associated with her infidelity. Similarly, her best friend divorced her husband and gained custody of their 2 children after the video went viral. My wife couldn't face the public due to the judgmental looks she received from people. She couldn't even attend her high school reunion because everyone had seen the video. On my part, I had to relocate to a different place to start my life anew. Whenever I recall how my wife deceived me and betrayed her friend of more than 15 years, it still astonishes me. She didn't value our marriage or her friendship with her friend, and someone capable of such actions could do even worse things. I know that I won't be entering another relationship anytime soon because my heart still aches when I remember how much I loved my wife and how she ruined everything we had.